In that case,
you can call me Josh for the interview if you want to. Too.
Okay.
I don't mind that at all.
Alrighty then. What's up, Blazers? Welcome to Blazin Bites, the show with blazing questions and blazing wings. This is UAB's spiciest interview show. I'm here with Dr. Joshua Robinson. Dr. Robinson, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the camera for us?
Hello, everybody. I'm Josh Robinson. I am an associate professor of economics and the interim chair of the Department of Marketing, Industrial Distribution, and Economics. Happy to be here.
Okay, well, we're really excited to have you here. Before we start off with wing number one, we just wanted to go ahead and ask you, because obviously you're pretty rooted here in Birmingham. You've had time to get familiar with the local restaurant scene. We like to do this with every guest. We were curious, what are some of your favorite restaurants here in Birmingham? You know, places you can get some maybe good wings, good spicy food, or if you're not such a spice guy, maybe just like some favorites of yours.
Oh man, that's a really good question. So I don't go out to eat a lot, so I'll qualify that. So I eat at home a bunch. So maybe I should say like, what are my favorite breweries?
Yeah,
instead.
please.
Yeah, so probably my number one is Monday Night Brewing.
Okay.
On 12th. That's probably my favorite. And, you know, Good People's always great too. But then like the one that I like right now that's got a lot of variety of beer is Highwire.
Really?
Yeah.
I haven't had Highwire.
Individual beers, like not like none of my favorites are there, but like man, what a variety of styles, which is like rare to see. So yeah, I'm more of a connoisseur of the beer scene than I am the food scene in Birmingham.
I see. Well, we'll touch on that. We're going to get back to that. So with that, we're ready for wing number one.
Okay.
This is the Buffalo One, I believe.
All right.
It's a little bit more on the chill side, nothing too crazy.
All right.
And I should clarify, you're under no obligation to down all of these wings.
Okay.
So, just sort of getting started off, we were curious if you could, oh man, that's because that's already a little bit spicy for me.
Yeah.
So I'm already stumbling over my words.
All right.
So we're in for something here. But just to start us off here, on sort of a surface level, if you could sort of give us like what economics means to you in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, econ is really a story of how people do trade-offs, more or less. And then we carry that on up, from the individual level of you and your household. How do you decide what to buy and what not to buy? How do you choose to spend your time? And how do you choose not to spend your time? These are all trade-offs, right? And then we carry that same language all the way up to the society level and thinking about the economy, where you have like the Federal Reserve right now trying to figure out what the right balance is of controlling inflation, but in doing so, they might cause a recession, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same trade-off kind of story. It's just not something that you or I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis,
right.
But it's the same kind of logic. And so I think that's what econ is for me. Is it's just all about finding the trade-offs and understanding them in terms of trade-offs, not just cost, right? Money itself is arbitrary, time is arbitrary, but they have different meanings to you at different points in time, and that's what's really important.
Definitely. I think one thing I found really interesting from your class, because I went through your microecon and macroecon class, one thing I found really interesting was like how that information, how like what you do with the available data and how you choose to interpret it, like how people will react to different stimuli, like how valuable that is to legislation and how often, and policy, and how often policymakers just straight up ignore it.
Yep, all the time.
So I was sort of curious, and I know just like it's something you speak very passionately about when you're teaching, but like what are some like sort of common problems that you've identified or that you're like, that are on your radar right now that could be solved super easily, super quickly, but have been sort of just still go on because people are ignoring economists?
Well, I actually have two for you that are just pretty constant states of annoying me. So the first one is the carbon tax. Global warming, I very, very much believe global warming is real. It's an existential threat to our society. Now there's some degree of it that we're not going to be able to stop at this point, but we could go a long way with just carbon taxes. Just simply putting a tax on the carbon people produce and release into the atmosphere, or use in the case of gasoline for everyday consumers. Now this is one of those things that's not politically popular at all, right? Because like who's going to vote for the guy that says, I want to increase your a gallon of gas by $1 a gallon, right? Not something that a lot of people want to hear.
Right.
But we could do that in a way that's like revenue neutral, right? We could pay people back evenly, but so that in that way it would reward people who had a low carbon footprint and really punish people with a
Yeah.
high, I think there's a few different ways to do it, but that's one that just gets repeatedly ignored by economists. People are just like, it's a non-starter. Nobody's going to be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
The other one is recycling and plastic. It drives me crazy. Like aluminum is infinitely recyclable, and yet we insist on using plastic and everything, which is not. We act like we recycle this stuff, but the vast majority of plastics just end up in a landfill or end up shredded. If they can get recycled, it's recycled in a lower form, right? This is why like plastic bottles get turned into grocery bags and not more plastic bottles, because they can't, right? So again, like I think this stuff should be taxed, right? And aluminum should be subsidized, and aluminum recycling should be more incentivized, but it's not.
Completely. Like, it is crazy, like, how, like, simple some of these solutions can be, and, like, how obvious you can see, like, just how intuitive it is that it would work, and yet it doesn't happen because, like, of what you're saying. It just, like, the words that come out when you describe it seem distasteful or something.
Right, yeah, I think it takes some nuance to understand why it's a good policy, and people just are not very into nuance these days. Everybody wants, like, it's either right or wrong answer,
right.
And it doesn't sound right when you say it, right? I want to make your gas more expensive. That doesn't sound fun to people, so.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we're ready for wing number 2.
Okay.
This is the Buffalo 2.
All right.
It's nice. Yeah, great flavor, all of these. All the compliments go to Chef Brandon. He does an excellent job. So, your areas of study per, what we're able to find online through our research. You go through healthy gun, human capital, inequality, and gun policy. And I sort of felt that the common thread with all of these is that you're sort of using economics as a tool to keep people safe and keep people healthy and sort of ensure greater welfare for people, just on like a basic sense. So I was sort of curious, like, what drew you to that range of study?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm guessing it probably has something to do with, I feel like a lot of how I became an economist was growing up without a lot of money. I certainly wasn't like, I don't want to like pretend I was like destitute or something. Like, we had a house, we had clothes and food. I never went hungry. We just didn't have a lot of, no extras, right? We were, a very minimalistic family, and so I was very acutely aware of trade-offs from an early age, right? Like if, one of my siblings needed something expensive, like new glasses or something like that. I mean, the rest of us had to do without some stuff. I mean, it was really obvious to me from a young age, and so I think that kind of was what helped me think like an economist from an early age, and then from then on, I think it was kind of like, as I learned more, as I got older, about like, oh well, there were some simple things we could have done to improve our lives a little bit, but we didn't know any better. So I think I got a passion for thinking about how people can improve their own lives and how policy can improve people's lives with kind of real simple fixes or small trade-offs at least. And so I tend to kind of look for big problems and simple solutions if I can.
I think that's good. I mean, I think like the little things can really like add up, and even when you say like the little things, it sort of implies that like something small can only have a small change. Right. But it's like you're saying, like these small changes can have like huge like butterfly effect impacts on people's lives. So I was curious, like, if you could sort of name any ways that like thinking in terms of economics, thinking in terms of like these trade-offs and supply and demand could like improve the everyday lives of like students here at UAB, like just things that they could think about to sort of improve their decision making. Yeah,
I mean, so I think it's a really basic answer, but I really do think just thinking about opportunity cost instead of absolute cost. And so for anyone who's never heard the term before, opportunity cost is like the cost of what you give up. So I don't think about, I'm not spending an hour of time doing something, I'm giving up doing something else that I could spend an hour on, right? And it's like, I'm not buying wings for lunch, I'm giving up the ability to buy something else.
I see.
And so I think thinking in terms of opportunity costs and inherently in thinking in terms of trade-offs helps you make better decisions. You're less regretful of the things you do. You do things less flippantly because you're understanding what it is you're actually giving up versus just thinking in terms of money or time. And I think it's funny, it's almost something we unlearn at some point, like as we're growing up, because kids think this way. If you talk to little kids, they think about things in terms of, I can have this thing or this thing. That's how their brains automatically work. And somehow between, I don't know, toddler age and high school, we unlearn it and learn to think in terms of money and time, which aren't always good gauges, right? Like, your time at the beginning of the semester is worth a lot less than it is right in the middle of midterms, right? Like an hour of your time has very different values depending on the context. So that would be my one that I would say. Everybody can do it, and it would make a big difference.
That is really interesting. Like that already is just like putting me on like a line of thought of just like, things I can do. Like I could spend an hour watching TikToks, but I'm not going to get much value out of that when I could spend that time. That's time I could be spending doing something more valuable, Like be time I could spend speaking with Dr. Robinson about valuable decisions I could be making.
Questionable value.
So with that, we're ready for wing number 3.
All right. So this is where they start really getting intense.
Yes. This is the trouble, as Chef Brandon indicated.
Okay.
I believe that's the house blend.
Still really good flavor. Mm-hmm. Gosh.
Kind of some notes of like barbecue in there.
Yeah.
It's really
That's
interesting.
Great.
Yeah.
Oh, now that heats it.
This is about the time that I cracked them up.
All right, I was waiting for you to crack it. I was like, I got to hold out at least.
Yeah. There have been some days where I don't even need it. And there are days like today where I know it's going to be about halfway empty by the time this is over.
That one sneaks up on you a little bit.
It does. So, you have a YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Beers with an Economist.
That's right, yeah.
Yes. So, on your YouTube channel, you mention how one of the most annoying questions you receive is people bugging you. They find out you're an economist. They go, "Oh, tell me about crypto. Tell me about what I can do with Bitcoin." So, it's evident to many people that it's sort of it can be snake oil for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I was curious if you could just sort of break down for us, maybe give us the bullet pointed, like why crypto is BS, why it's not like a sound investment for a lot of people.
Love this question. I think we need to take a step back and think about like what money is. So again, this kind of conditioning that we have growing up about thinking about things in terms of money, it makes us believe money is inherently valuable in some way, and it's absolutely not. Right? Money is a placeholder. Right? Like in the videos I mentioned this, but I also mention in class all the time. I like to think of money as a little certificate of achievement. It basically just proves you did something valuable and kind of holds its place until you can demonstrate that for somebody else who does something valuable. So it's kind of like just a series of trades where I do something for you, you do something for me, and the money just means that we don't have to make an instantaneous transaction. I can hold on to my value for a little while. And that's all it is. Right. It's like an IOU. But because we tend to think of money as being valuable, we lose sight of what money's function actually is. So the crypto people, have at least that end of it right, is that they have an asset that's not backed by anything. And that indeed is very similar to money. It's only backed by the faith in the U.S. economy, right, for our U.S. dollar. That's really all it's backed by. There's no gold behind it. There's no silver. But what they fail to miss is that the biggest reason money is useful is because everyone takes it, and everybody can value things in it, so they know how much something should cost in dollars. And then it stores that value over time. This is kind of the three functions of money. Everybody takes it, everybody can value things in it, and everybody can store it. Well, crypto serves none of those functions, whether you're talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, I don't care. Very few people take it, right? No one can value things in it. Nobody can tell you how many, Ethereum, this bottle of milk is worth, at least not with first converting it between dollars or some other common currency. And then it doesn't store value well because it's incredibly volatile. So, it's not money. And then a lot of people are like, oh, but like, I can buy it low and sell it high and become crypto rich, right? That's the story you hear about on the news all the time. And it's just like, for every person doing that, there's someone else losing their life savings, right? Because we're just trading an asset back and forth. It doesn't generate any value. It doesn't produce anything. It doesn't provide a service. It's literally just me selling you widgets because you think widgets are going to go higher in price and I don't think they're going to go higher in price. And we're just doing this. So, it's a really risky way to gamble. There's far more enjoyable ways to gamble if you like gambling, is what I always tell people. And then, there's just so many scams out there, right? Like these YouTube guys like Logan Paul and all these nutbags, like offering NFT scams and crypto scams. It's just, they're just making themselves rich off other people. So, yeah, almost evangelical about how much I hate crypto. Do everything I can to convince people to stay away from it.
Hey, that's okay. I think we can say here, Blazin Bites, not a crypto-friendly publication, not a crypto-friendly program. We don't like it here. So, making a little bit of a pivot, we were sort of talking about before we started the program, we sort of want to find the humanity, these professors, they're not people that just spawn into existence when you walk into your classroom every day. So we were curious, like, what's a day off look like for an economist? What's an enjoyable Saturday for you like?
It's fall, so obviously it's going to involve watching some college football. Usually, this time of year I like to catch some Premier League soccer in the mornings if I can. Saturday, Sunday, a little college football in the afternoons. Usually involves a few beers on my part.
Heck yeah.
And just kind of mostly relaxing, hanging out with my kids, doing things, maybe watch a movie in the evenings. I also like, it's not a super frequent hobby, but when I have time, I enjoy like making things out of wood, building furniture, things like that.
That's interesting. Like what kind of stuff have you made recently?
It's usually really practical things. I'm usually just building something for, something my wife wants or my kids want. But I guess my most recent project is I built like a big Murphy bed. I don't know if you've seen. So like Murphy bed's like a bed that folds up into the wall.
Yeah.
And I like made side cabinets and bookcases like to fit around it, so it looks like a built-in. But that was for my wife's home office. So we had like a spare bedroom that we wanted to be her home office, but we still wanted that functionality of a spare bedroom. So I built a Murphy bed.
That's cool.
Things like that. But I do that a lot less frequently because it, usually don't have that much time on the weekends to get stuff done.
Fair enough. Okay, so I believe we're ready for number 4.
All right.
This is the...
I'm doing okay so far. I'm waiting for, I'm assuming one of these is really going to get me in a second.
The 13, I think, is the kicker for a lot of people.
Again, it's still really good.
Yeah. That's the thing I think that it surprises me every time. Yeah, that one is a lot.
That one's got some kick to it.
And it grows.
Yes, it does.
Oh, man. Sort of sits in the throat.
Whew. I'm going to take a sip on that one.
Yeah, please. So, we talked about it earlier. I told you we'd circle back to it. I have to know. You're a beer connoisseur.
Okay.
You talk about it a lot in your class. You talk about it on your YouTube channel. We wanted to know if you could give us maybe a sort of tier list, a sort of Mount Rushmore, your number one goated beers.
Oh, wow.
If you had to just if you had to educate the masses on what they can do to refine their palate.
Okay. So I feel pretty strongly about this, and this is going to, I'm probably going to get some hate on this one, but just drop the IPAs and sours already. It's such a strong flavor, you really cannot appreciate the subtleties of the beer at all. So IPAs are, it's just all hops. I'm not saying there's not good IPAs. There are good IPAs, but especially with the modern the hazy IPAs and double IPAs, it's just all hops, right? And then sours, same thing. It's just a really sour, fruity flavor right in your face. There's no subtlety to it. So go back to older styles excuse me.
Oh, you're okay.
Some more of that just went down my throat.
If you need a second, we can take one.
go back and appreciate some like older like German styles of beer, things like that. A good Maybach or Helles, Schwarzbier, just something that, or even like some classics like a stout or just a good like brown ale. So you can kind of appreciate more of like the subtle flavors that it has to offer. I feel like so many things now are just geared towards like uber strong, overwhelming flavor, which to me just kind of takes some of the fun out of it. And it's like it's not that I hate those styles. It's just maybe I'm just a little sick of them.
I think it all comes back to like, I think at the end of the day, what everybody wants is kind of just like juice. People just want like flavored vodka, flavored soda, flavored water, whatever. People just want to drink people just want to have fruity flavors. Yeah. And they don't want to take a second to sort of dive a little bit deeper.
The sauerkraut is not going to like you saying that. And again, not knocking the style as a whole. I'm not saying it's terrible.
Oh, of course.
Branch out more. Like try some more different things. Because there's a lot out there. But don't underappreciate the classics either. Like on a Saturday afternoon, a good Coors Banquet, not light, the original like yellow can Coors. It's great beer.
Yeah.
Inexpensive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was something you had mentioned in one of your classes, that people don't appreciate the cheap stuff enough because people, these are huge companies. They've put billions of dollars into making the very best beer they can at the most affordable price.
I mean, that's it. It's like, we kind of venerate craft brewers, which, again, when they're doing innovative stuff and getting styles of beer that you can't just go anywhere and find, amazing. But like, you're hard pressed to beat a company that's been making lagers for 200 years in America, and probably hundreds of years, dating back to Europe. You're pretty hard pressed to figure out how to do that better than them. Yeah. Right. So a good macro beer is always there. But I'm a beer lover in general. I even like cheap beer. Like I'll hang out with a PBR or a High Life.
I'll drink to that. So. We had a similar question for Dr. Welch. Obviously, she studies philosophy. Okay. What sort of thoughts are like nagging at your mind in terms of like economics? What sort of problems do you see? Like maybe the next thing you want to write a research paper about, the next thing that is sort of bothering you. The things you ponder when you're in the shower. What's going on?
So I guess I have two big ones, and I guess they both would be like pretty politically controversial, but
that's okay.
Not to me. So it's immigration and gun control. So just minor issues. So with immigration, and this is research that Dr. Ben Meadows and Dr. Griffin Edwards and I are all working on currently. There's a real anti-immigration sentiment that seems to have been like taking hold in the U.S., especially over the last 5 to 10 years. I feel like even there's always that undercurrent of it, but I really feel like it's flared up over the last few years. And we as an American society, we're often described as a country of immigrants, right? I mean, it's so much of our success story is about allowing immigration, when most of the rest of the world was pretty hostile to it. So, just as an example, think about post-World War II, basically the entire like university system, like what we're enjoying right now in America, was built on immigrant refugees with lots of education and things like that. Is kind of what built our university system. So anyway, and so we're currently writing a paper about like some anti-immigration laws that like states like Alabama and some other states have passed in the past that caused a lot of immigrants to exit the states, and kind of what the impacts of that were, both good and bad for the remaining residents. So we're kind of thinking through some of those problems, and then I think you mentioned my research on guns earlier. So growing up in Alabama, I grew up around guns my whole life, right? And still own several guns myself, so I'm not anti-gun, but it's really clear that we have like a pretty serious, gun violence problem in the United States. And so trying to think about ways that that we can bridge the gap, because there's just this massive gap between people who typically don't own guns or very anti-gun, and then people who are gun enthusiasts and kind of don't want anything bad to be said about guns whatsoever, or any laws that might restrict any access. And there's such a huge gap in trying to think about how through like just dispassionate research, not coming at it with an agenda at all, how we can kind of get some of those facts straight and try to, close that gap a little bit so we can make some progress.
Yeah, that's something I'm actually really excited about. Like, because it seems like it has been such like this huge problem that has just been like endemic to our country for the better part of like, when you think of like really intense gun violence, like for the better part of like 2 decades now. And of course it's always been a problem, but it seems like it just keeps getting worse and worse every year. And there's really been like almost no adjustments made to like try and remedy that. So
and to be fair, it's a nuanced problem.
Of course.
It is a difficult problem because there's a lot of guns in America, right?
Yeah.
This isn't like, the scale of weapons in America is something that's hard for people to grasp unless you like see it. I mean, so like we don't know exactly, but there's anywhere from 350 million to 900 million guns in America right now. I mean, so like the minimum estimate is more than one gun for every man, woman, and child in the country, right? So, and kind of through my own research, what I've discovered is that a lot of guns doesn't necessarily, it takes a huge amount of increased gun availability to create new violence. Which is what the kind of the pro-Second Amendment, pro-gun crowd says. It's like most Americans are safe with their weapons, and they're not wrong. But what they're kind of forgetting is the scale of increase of the amount of weapons. So like for decades and decades and decades, going back as far as we have data for it, there's typically about 1 million, like somewhere between 500,000 and maybe 1.2 million guns sold a year in the United States. It has not been uncommon to have more than 10 million guns sold in a single year in recent years. So think about the scale of that. Like, so even if it takes a huge increase in guns to increase violence, we're getting orders of magnitude increase in weapon sales. And so what we're seeing is gun violence increasing over the last decade, probably for that reason. At least that's what my research seems to indicate.
That's interesting. Well, I think on that note, we're ready for number 5. This is the Buffalo 13. You do not have to take a bite of the garnish if you don't want to. It can be difficult for some people.
I might go back in for it. We'll see. Okay.
Yeah. Listen, it is okay. That's a lot from the gate. Woo. Yeah. That's how I'm feeling.
Still really tasty though.
That's the thing.
That's what's wild.
Awesome flavor.
Like usually when I think about like painfully hot, like I don't usually like the flavor, but that is phenomenally good, but also
Okay. So for question 10, we were going to ask you to break down why students should engage with economics and why it's important for our lives. But we kind of just spent the past half hour fully detailing that. So I think I'm going to pivot a little bit. We didn't know this before going into this interview, but as we've sat down and talked to you, you're a huge punk fan.
Yeah.
If you could give us, we've asked you to do a few favorites, but if you could just give us one more, your Mount Rushmore. If you could build a Mount Rushmore.
Oh man.
Punk acts, or even just of any music acts that you're a huge fan of. Whose faces would be up there?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we'll have to go by a few different eras. Of punk. I mean, so like early like '80s punk. I think you got to go Descendants and Bad Religion. So these are kind of the two that they influenced every punk band in the '90s and 2000s and every kind of bastard spin-off genre that came out of that. They're great. I mean, you go back and listen to Bad Religion songs from like 1988. I mean, they're still relevant today. It's still interesting social commentary. From the 90s skate punk era, I'd say like You got to check out Strung Out, Lagwagon. Those would probably be two of my favorites. Late 90s, early 2000s, I would have to say Thursday, The Refused, and Alkaline Trio. Alkaline Trio still tours, by the way. Fantastic band. Yeah, I haven't heard a lot lately that I'm super into. So like punk bands, that's it. We'd have to make a different list for metal and hardcore bands, but yeah, those would be tier list.
Well, that's perfect. That's exactly what we were looking for. I think with that, Dr. Joshua Robinson, thank you so much for coming on. You know, if you have anything you'd like to plug, economics department, you have a camera there and you have a camera there. You can tell the people whatever you want. You can tell them to come to your class. Now's your chance.
So come take econ classes. I'm now the interim chair of marketing, industrial distribution, and econ. So we have just a phenomenal set of faculty over in MIDE. And so if you haven't taken a business class, haven't taken an econ class or a marketing class, I highly encourage all you guys to come over and try one out, because we have great professors. They really care about the students. They're really engaging, and they really love making their course material relevant to the real world. So we're not just drawing graphs and talking about textbook material. We're talking about what's going on in the news today, how does it apply, and how can you understand it better. So come check out our classes.
Okay, that was perfect. You did amazing. I couldn't have asked for a better interview. This has been Josh Robinson, everybody. This has been Blazin Bites, the show with Blazin Questions, Blazin Wings, UAB's spiciest interview show. Thank you for coming on. And folks, we'll see you next week.
I enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.